from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to the Thursday night edition of the program. We're live and national. I'm keeping you company all night, pretty much all night for the next 3 hours. And we're going to have, or maybe not the next, depending on what time you get this clip, right? It depends. They jumble up the show in some markets. But either way, we're here, we're live, and we're national. Let me give you the phone number. It's 833-482-5337, 8334-Valdez. And there's a number of things I want to get into today. We're scheduled to have Congressman Byron Donalds on with us tomorrow. They're thinking of moving NASA to Florida. We're going to get him to weigh in on that. Tonight, we've got a killer lineup as well. In a little bit, we're scheduled to have the great one, Mark Levin. He's supposed to join us in a little bit, as well as the former SEC chair. That's the FEC. I always get those confused. The Federal Election Commission chairman, Hans Von Spakovsky, is going to join us a little bit later. We're going to talk about some of that stuff, and then a whole lot of Open Phone America as we get through lots of the topics of what's going on in America at night. But I want to start off with some of the big headlines of the evening, and there's always something, right? There's always something. The latest is the FBI, right? This is not the biggest, but this is an interesting one. The FBI is being tapped to help locate Texas Democrats who have fled the state. I laugh because, I mean, really, what are you going to do? Lock up a bunch of Congress people for going to Illinois and, not showing up to vote? I guess you could use a whole lot of procedural motions, but I think at the end of the day, this is a losing proposition. It only exalts them, right? It only makes them, you're going to hear more from Jasmine Crockett, not less. So I would be guided accordingly on that one. The federal judge has halted the expansion of Alligator Alcatraz. So that's the holding facility in Florida where people are held until they decide to go to their country of origin. And what else here? This is an interesting one. You remember a couple of years back, there was a bunch of people. Matter of fact, I had one on the show. You ever seen that preacher with no arms and no legs, Nick Vujicic, we had on the show? He was debanked because of his views on abortion. Well, today the administration, President Trump, signed an executive order to protect people from being debanked because that was prominent at that time. 2021, 2022, maybe even into 2023, very popular. A lot of people were just getting tossed off the platforms for whatever, right? If they liked guns, you couldn't buy guns. If you liked Trump, you couldn't have that credit card. You couldn't be with that. If you were bundling money for Trump or raising money for any conservative cause, it was really, really bad. We thought the Lois Lerner scandal in the Obama era was bad. That banking stuff was horrible. And executive order today that says you can't do that anymore. So hopefully, like many other executive orders, that will become law. And this is what I've got to give kudos to President Trump on this stuff, because making all these executive orders is one thing. And when President Obama was doing it, there was a lot of critique that he was ruling by executive fiat, right? Because, in effect, he wasn't even trying to get this through to be the law of the land. He just wanted to control what he could control through the power of his office. And, again, that was his prerogative. However, President Trump takes it the full 9 yards here, and he says, you know what, we're going to make it law. And they've gotten these things into law. He signed all of those crypto bills. He signed all of those crypto executive orders that became crypto bills and are now law because he signed them all. So these are very good things. Lots of what's in the Big Beautiful Bill started out as executive orders. So I'm happy to see all of that stuff. And it's important that we have those things because people get reckless when they have a little bit of power. And we saw it with Obama, and we're seeing it corrected now with Trump, and even with Biden, right, with the continuation of the Obama agenda. But people globally are taking note, right? You've got Cambodia now nominating El Trompito Donaldus Magnus, the 45th president of these United States, for a Nobel Prize. And I say kudos to you, Mr. President. That's fantastic. I'm glad that that's happening. Now, here's one that I want you guys to push back on me, if you can. The Department of Justice is announcing $50 million in a reward for information leading to the leader of the regime in Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro, for his complicity in bringing illegal drugs into the United States by way of, transnational criminal syndicates like Tren de Aragua and others, and the cartels. But here's why I want you to push back. If I say, hey, psst, psst, DOJ, did you guys know that he's literally in their version of the White House in Venezuela? What is the purpose of this? What is the purpose of saying I'm going to give you $50 million for information leading to his capture? It's not like it's a bounty, at least not as I understand it. And maybe it is. Maybe if somebody catches him, maybe that's exactly what it is. But it's not how I understood it. And if I'm wrong, then, I stand corrected. But we know where this man is. We've got the best war fighters on the planet. Why wouldn't we just go get him if we want him? Right? I mean, am I wrong here? I don't know. And this is, I think why it's important to not talk about him per se, but he's a perfect example of what happens when you have power. Machiavelli saying that when you have absolute power, it corrupts absolutely. And this, I believe, is a very appropriate statement. And for me, I think it's important that we look at history. It's important that we look at those who've come before us. You've heard me talk many times about, some of the founders and, the people that informed the founders, Alexis de Tocqueville and others. And I learned all that stuff from the great one, Mark Levin, right, who would constantly use historical context and historical analysis to kind of analyze the problems of the day. And this is incredibly important because you got to kind of understand why people are doing what they're doing, not just what they said. The idea of liberty becomes more crystal clear in your mind when you understand, not only what people sacrificed for it, but what it actually means and why they're doing what they do. So his latest book, and I would say this is a seminal work on power, it's called, and it's on power. So very apropos the title. But the importance of this is that this is not a book for now. This is a book forever. This is a book that I think really is going to explain why it's so important for us to understand power and how it influences so many aspects of our lives. So keep it locked right here. Straight ahead, we are going to come back with the great one, Mark Levin.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Well, thank you, Rich, and thank you for everything. I know you very well, and I listen, but I have a lot of people that listen, and they love your show, and I appreciate it very much.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, familia, welcome back. It's Valdez keeping you company tonight, and we're talking about power, and I don't mean the type of power that runs out in California. I'm talking about the book from the great one, Mark Levin. And he writes in the book, many have written about and debated the issue of power, including the ancients and modern philosophers, scholars, and statesmen alike. Why? Because power determines your social arrangements, quality of life, and more to the point of this book, whether you're free or enslaved or some degree of either. In short, it determines your personal fate, the fate of your community, and the fate of a nation. Really well put. Very, very to the point. I want to bring him in. He's a friend. He's a mentor. He's a modern-day scholar, in my opinion. The great one, Mark Levin. Welcome, sir.
Richie V. Boy, was it great to see you at the book signing, man. You look good.
Thank you. Thank you. I've been in the gym, and I've been eating a little bit less. Just a little bit.
Yeah. No, you look good.
You too. You too, sir. And the family.
In a manly way. You understand.
Yes, yes. We say no diddy when we did it. You look good. No diddy. No diddy. So I want to get into this because, I've read every one of your books, and they've all been terrific, really. Probably Liberty and Tyranny, probably making the biggest impact on me. And I feel like this is, if there could ever be a part 2 or to be continued to Liberty and Tyranny, it's this one on power. What sparked this one for you, sir?
First of all, that is a great point. I think Julie, my wife, made that point too. Well, what sparked this one was, Liberty and Tyranny came out around the same time as the Tea Party. And this book, I'm hoping, will galvanize people to make different kinds of arguments, different kind of understanding what's going on, because just sloganeering about liberty and so forth, that's not going to fly now. We are really up against something, a force that we really never anticipated, this fusion of out-of-the-closet radical Marxism with Islamism, and throw in a dollop of anti-Semitism. It is a growing movement, not just in the Democrat Party. That's bad enough. It comes out of our universities. It comes out of the media, and it's imported from the Middle East and Europe. And it is having a significant impact on our country. Donald Trump is fighting it tooth and nail. He's fighting the anti-Semitism. He's fighting the open borders, and he's trying to force people out of this country or trying to overthrow it. He's under constant assault and sabotage by the bureaucracy and the unelected judges. And so I thought, I got to get our heads around this, try and get as many people to understand what's taking place so we can have all the Paul Reveres and the Thomas Paines that I like to call on, the Levinites I call them, to spread the word, because we, as an army of patriots, are much bigger than any podcaster, any network, any cable TV, than anything. And this is how we've built these movements in the past, and I want to build a movement right now to fight this. And so I got to thinking about this, Rich, and it's really a matter of power. These are battles over power. The Revolutionary War was a battle over power, because liberty without rights is nothing, and rights without power are nothing. And so power is the key. Now, the left understands this. They try and concentrate power. They try and steal power from the sovereign, we the people, from individuals. That includes property rights. That includes changing words, thought processes, language. And so I decided to break it down, and I broke it down into positive power, because power can be used in a very positive way, negative power where it's not. And I explained the history of our founding, which is a belief system that God is the sovereign. His people on earth, we, the people, we're the sovereign when it comes to governing, not some small cabal or ruling class or dictator or whatever. And then what else did the founders do? They fused this with the Enlightenment, and that's important. And the earthly application of this sovereignty. And the main thing they gave us from the Enlightenment was power checking power. Now, for the Marxists and the Islamists, it isn't power checking power. It's power that is used to control. And so that is a big difference. And I get into it in great detail in the book.
Yeah, and you're right. It's kind of like a new take on something that wasn't around at that time, at the time of John Locke or even Isaiah Berlin, positive and negative liberty. It's this use of power. It's this usurpation of we the people, because of how unique I think our republic is and our constitutional system. We haven't had it, and we've never been around for as long as we have. And now that we've matured, we're seeing what Adams talked about with this being for a holy, virtuous, and religious people, and it's inadequate for any other. We are any other now, right? I think we're people that have lost our way, and we're seeing the result. Would you agree?
I agree, and it's interesting you bring up Berlin, who was kind of a hero of mine, positive and negative power. And I went back and I looked at that, and I have a footnote in the book on this. And when you really go through what he wrote, his essay for Oxford first, and then his book, which more fully develops it, he's talking about power. And that's my point. I said, he's really not talking about freedom. He's talking about power, negative power, positive power, how they're exercised, and this circle of power and so forth. And then I went back, I read John Mill. It's John Stuart Mill, who wrote a whole book on liberty, who's a big libertarian hero. And I read his whole book, and then when I got to the end of it, I said, wait a minute. He doesn't really define liberty. I mean, he goes through what it isn't and the confines of it. And then at the very end, in one paragraph, he kind of says, but of course, the government needs to step in. I said, well, that's not fulfilling. Then I look at Sam Adams, who wrote a lot about liberty, except his long essay on liberty doesn't define liberty. Then I went back to Aristotle. He doesn't define liberty, so I determined that, well, liberty is defined by what it's not, and it's one of those words. And why is that important? It's important because, you know, when you read 1984 in Animal House, George Orwell and so forth, he makes a tremendous point, which is the people who would steal your liberty and impose tyranny, they steal our words like liberty and democracy and rights, and they use them to project a belief system that has the opposite of what those words mean, but they do it to confound and confuse and to camouflage. And it's interesting because Abraham Lincoln, I quote him at the back of Liberty and Tyranny, which I guess was my most influential book, and he talks about how the slave owner and those who fight slavery both claim liberty. The slave owner claims the liberty to own property, which is another human being, and the abolitionist says no. It's the liberty of the individual, but that individual is not property. And Lincoln says, well, they both can't be right. And in fact, only one is right and one is wrong. Well, it's the same when it comes to this issue of power and why it's so important to understand that the left gets it. They know what power is and they want it. And they are power hungry. The Democrat Party today, they don't care about the people. They want the border opened. There's women sold into sex slavery, kids who are missing, hundreds of thousands of them.
Right.
They don't want anybody deported because they want to change the map. They want to change the citizenry. This is the surest way to ensure that they have power forever. So I go through all these things and I break down the word power, and I call the Democrats basically, they're authoritarian Democrats. You know, they'll go through the motion of voting. They'll claim they care about three branches of government. They really don't. They're really authoritarians.
Brutally honest. Amigos, we're on with the great one, Mark Levin, discussing his book On Power, which is on Amazon, and I recommend you get 2 copies, one for yourself, one to give away. It is summertime, so while you're at the beach, while you're at the lake, while you're taking those days off and those half days on Friday, you want to read this book. And I just started reading. I got it on Saturday, but I had a crazy week. And in keeping with the tradition of this program, right, the late Larry King, who preceded Jim Bohannon, never read a book until he talked to the author and then read it afterwards. So stealing a page out of his playbook there. Folks, we're coming right back, and we're going to continue the discussion with Mark Levin as we discuss the call to action in the book. We know why he wrote it. Now we're going to talk about what we need to do as informed patriots. Don't go anywhere. It's Mark Levin coming back with me, Rich Valdez.
The best guests, the best opinions. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, familia, welcome back. Rich Valdez keeping you company live and national. 833-4-VALDEZ is the phone number. And it's an honor and a pleasure to have the great one, Mark Levin, on the show tonight. We're talking about his brand new book. Again, get 2 copies of it at Amazon.com. The book is called On Power. And so much, this is, again, an excerpt from the book, so much in life orbits around the world, idea, belief, power. This book is intended to provoke a better comprehension of what is meant by power, its impact on the individual and mankind generally, and stimulate a broader examination and dialogue about its applications. In doing so, And if it succeeds, even modestly, perhaps it'll prove an additional source for liberty and against tyranny. And ultimately, that's the battle we always fight. So, Mark Levin, the great one, I want to, really, I guess, get to the crux of it. You spell this out wonderfully, as you always do. But for the rest of us here that are grateful for the heavy lift that you did and put it on these pages, what do we do once we've read it?
I tell people we're an army of millions. We're bigger than any TV or radio host. We're bigger than any so-called influencer. What we do is we talk to our family and friends and our fellow citizens, whether we're church or synagogue, you're at a restaurant, wherever you are. You've got to be a proselytizer. You've got to speak out. You can do it politely and do it with class. But rather than us sitting there listening to people go on and on about inequality, about how horrible America is, about free stuff for everybody, that I'm a democratic socialist, we need to learn how to respond to that. And there are ways to do that if we understand what we're dealing with. These people are trying to seize the power from the sovereign, the individual. They're trying to seize the power from the civil society. They're trying to corrupt the constitutional system. And why is all this important? Because we are not Marxists, we're not Islamists, we're not Jew haters, we are Americans. And so we need to engage that fight. I'll give you an example. When they say we got to get rid of billionaires and it's very unequal the way the economy works, the haves have and the have-nots don't get, it's a flat-out lie. Anybody can walk into a supermarket, as I use this as an example, and have access to the widest variety and amount of food and drinks and whatever you want that human beings have ever had from all parts of the country, from all parts of the world. Really, we talk about the price, which is not cheap, but it's much cheaper than anywhere else on the face of the earth. We live better today than any kings or queens ever lived 150 years ago, ever. We have access to mobility, automobiles, trains, planes, 40,000 feet up in the air, where it's air-conditioned, where we can pull our seats back and take a nap, where we get pretzels and maybe a Coke. Nobody ever dreamed this sort of thing would happen. And you can go through, you hit a light switch and the lights come on, you turn on the faucet and you get clean hot water and cold water. You have a toilet in your house. We have sewer systems. Where did all this come from? It came from the American system, not Marxism, not Islamism. And what is this American system? What makes it so different? What makes it different, as I explain in the book, is the Judeo-Christian belief system, the belief in who the people are, and fused with the Enlightenment. Now, that doesn't mean you have to be Jewish or Christian. It doesn't mean you have to believe in a thing. But that's how the country was created. And that's why there is so much opportunity. And that's why it's the most moral country on the face of the earth. And that's why we respect the individual. Now, we are imperfect, obviously, Rich, as human beings. Our systems are imperfect. And that's where the Marxists try to exploit these imperfections. Why? Because they compare something, us, with nothing, with an ideology. Well, of course, that's always going to be perfect. But when you compare something with something, that's where they collapse. That's where they fall. Okay. Maduro in Venezuela, Marxist. The Castros, Marxists. Noriega, Marxist. Mao, Marxist. Stalin, Marxist. What do they all have in common? They're murderers, police states, and a lack of food, a lack of opportunity, a lack of freedom. So it's completely incompatible. Marxism and Islamism, they're throwbacks. They're primitive. And I'm talking about the radical Islamists. They're primitive. They use barbaric ideologies and arguments. They are the throwback. There's nothing progressive or modern about them. We are the ones who believe in human growth and the evolution of society and so forth and so on. So these are concepts in the book. I use phrases in the book. The book is very easy to read. It's the shortest book I've ever written, but it is power-packed with arguments, with explanations. The bottom line is we need to understand they understand what they're doing. They're grabbing as much power as they can, and we need to engage in that battle rather than act like, okay, we need another program. We have to meet them halfway. No, we have to expose them and explain to our friends and family and even sometimes strangers exactly what's going on.
Mark Levin, 4 years ago, you warned all of us in your book, American Marxism, laying out a lot of this, saying, hey, here it is, and here it's coming. And here we are. We've got AOC being reelected twice. We've got Mamdani in New York trying to do a hostile takeover. And we're here. And now we have on power, some ammo. My question is, and I think you answered it in American Marxism, but I guess maybe an updated, abridged version of it. Why is there such a popularization of Marxism today? It seems like it's more popular now than ever. Meanwhile, the unfreedom of the press, it seems to have made a big impact. We're seeing, I think, a rollback in the crazy in the media.
Because I call it American Marxism for a reason, because they've tailored and customized Marxism to the American system. So we were never going to have a proletariat, that is, the working class, rise up and overthrow, the executives, the landowners, and so forth and so on. Why? Because Marx was wrong from day one.
Right.
Marx died, I think, in 1873, give or take. The Second Industrial Revolution, the one that really mattered, started in 1870. So he's writing things about things that never yet happened. And what the Industrial Revolution created, despite all the propaganda and the claptrap about robber barons and the rest, it created this massive middle class where people had access to all kinds of things, so many things, with so many people having access to them. I say you compare an American assembly line to an assembly line in one of these communist or fascistic countries, who's better off? The people on our assembly lines, the people on theirs? Well, clearly the people on ours. And so Marx never expected this, and he was wrong. So then in comes Gramsci. This is an American Marxism. In comes Gramsci, who is another communist intellectual, but he's Italian. He says, okay, Marx got this wrong. The revolution can't be from the bottom up. It has to be from the top down, particularly in America. So it has to be, it's got to spread in the culture, the bureaucracy, the elected officials have to impose it, and impose it slowly so it's not really felt, not this violent revolution from the bottom up that Marx is talking about. Well, he was right. That's what they're doing, and they've been doing it, and that's what we're suffering from. And so the point of this book on power is to explain to everybody, to the plumber, to the electrician, to the doctor, to the lawyer, to whomever is willing to read it and listen, and there's audio too, which I don't normally do, but I did it, how to address this. First, how to identify it, because ideas really do matter. They change the world. Marxism is an idea, but look at it put into action. Fascism is an idea. All these things are idea. The American experiment is an idea. And I fear, especially with young people, we are losing this battle because they control the culture, they control the school systems. And so we need to inform ourselves, read this book or listen to the audio or something, and engage at the dinner table, the breakfast table. Engage. You don't have to be obnoxious about it, but you don't need to be a wallflower either. And so I give the arguments and explanations in the book.
Well, I opt for being obnoxious, and I recommend everybody get a copy of the book. The book is On Power by Mark R. Levin. Make sure you get, I say get 2 copies, but honestly, in the years that I worked with the Great One, people would call and say, I'm getting 5. I'm giving one to every neighbor. I'm keeping them in the car. I'm giving them to people because people need to hear this message. And I have to say, I echo that sentiment. I want everybody to get a chance to read this and to know what's going on. Now that the audiobook read in the author's voice, how could you go wrong with that? Great One. It's always great to speak with you. I want to thank you for making some time. I know you just finished your show, and I'm grateful for the time. I appreciate it. Godspeed to you, and good luck with the book. Blessings to the family.
Well, you're a great person. You're a great host, and it's an honor to call you my friend. God bless you, Rich. Be well, brother.
Thank you. God bless. Amigos, we return right after this.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833 4Valdez. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4Valdez. That's Valdez with an S.
I'm so glad to be on your show, Rich. It's just an amazing broadcast that I hope the rest of America listens to every day.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
How concerned or not concerned are you about what Senator Cornyn, John Cornyn, said today, that the FBI has granted his request to go hunt down members of the Texas legislature who are not in Texas?
Oh, it's absolutely concerning. Obviously, this is not a federal issue. This is absolutely a state issue, as these are state lawmakers, number one. Number two, there's a lot of things that our FBI could be doing, such as keeping us safe, instead of doing the bidding of a corrupt president who has decided that he doesn't want any accountability, and he knows that the persons within his party are not willing to hold him accountable. And honestly, frankly, it is so concerning that this came from John Cornyn. Now, a Ted Cruz doing this, that sounds on brand, but John Cornyn is not this guy. I will tell you that I honestly have the utmost respect for John Cornyn. He has been a good partner when it comes to working on legislation. We have always put Texas first. So the idea that it's now Texas last and it's whatever the orange orangutan wants him to do is really sad, that he would get to this point in his career and then decide that he would start to kind of play the political games.
So that's Jasmine Crockett, Congresswoman from Texas, who's hanging out with the Texas lawmakers, the state representatives that are, MIA in Chicago and whatnot. And she's saying, look, I get it if Trump, and yesterday he was a piece of bleep. Today he's an orange orangutan. But she holds John Cornyn in very high regard, probably because John Cornyn, although he's a Republican, oftentimes is very friendly with Democrats. And I don't just mean like saying hi in the hallway, but friendly on legislative issues as well. So question here is this idea that we're going to use the FBI. And I'm not trying to poo-poo the idea. I'm really trying to be inquisitive here. Is this a thing? Is this something that you support, given the fact that, the FBI has the reputation that it currently has, that it's being used for political ends, the weaponization of government, et cetera, and there's so much emphasis on the FBI, and they're spread, in my opinion, they're spread so thin, trying to locate migrant children that are MIA. They're doing everything that the FBI does, while they're trying to clean up the ranks from within, right? Deputy Director Bongino and Director Patel. So is this the best use of their time? Again, I'm playing devil's advocate. I don't really have an opinion on this, but I'm curious to know your thoughts, because this is an interesting concept to me. So give me a call with that, 833-482-5337. And before I get to any of those, I want to also talk about this from the perspective of the conversation, right? So we just had a pretty in-depth conversation on power, right? Mark's new book, the new book by Mark Levin. And this is an interesting thing, because I think the idea of power is very important, because in the book he posits it as positive power or negative power. And I think that's a very good way of looking at it, because power in and of itself isn't bad. And I think Machiavelli points that out as well when he says, power corrupts absolutely, right? The thing, man. I feel like Biden. But the point is, there is absolute power. And I'm not talking about absolute power per se. I'm talking about just the idea of power. Like Donald Trump has power, right? He's probably, arguably, the most powerful president in the world. And I think he's using his power for all the right reasons, to right many wrongs. And in record speed, by the way, right? Like breakneck speed. So where does that put us? Well, I think it puts us at, something I mentioned earlier, and I think is worthy of repeating, is this is kind of how our republic was birthed, right? John Adams said, our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other. So I think, he's using government here as a word, like, as in the governance, as we would say today. This is an important point, right? A very important point, because if we've lost our way, if we've lost our moral compass, somebody's got to find the way, right? If we're not looking to the heavens, if we're not looking to the scriptures, if we're not looking to God, then what are we doing? And I use we collectively because, of course, there are many that do, but there are some that don't. And when those in power, like Jasmine Crockett, are going to use her power, her authority, her influence, not to help the country, right? I don't think anything she's doing is helpful. I would argue that it's hurtful to the republic, hurtful to our system, because it doesn't advance us. It's not progressive with a small p. It's not. All it does is add insult to injury and really, I think, widen a chasm that already exists. So I want to get your thoughts here. And I think that's similar to what we were talking about with this FBI stuff. I think we have a chasm there, and it gets widened if we were to use the FBI to get politicians to show up at work. In effect, I guess they're on strike. Now, I know that they may not have the collective bargaining power to do a demonstration that way, but they're politicians, and they do it anyway. So would we do that to union workers that didn't want to show up? I don't think we would. You'd fire them, like Reagan famously did, but I don't think we'd use the FBI to compel them to go to work. So I don't know. I think that's a little. I personally, the more I look at it, the more I think it may not be the thing. But if somebody out there wants to tell me why I'm wrong and that's a good idea, then let me know. Let me know, because ultimately I agree with the idea. We do need to make sure that we redistrict the map appropriately and that things get done. And I also think that Governor Abbott, this is not a slight on him at all. I think the world of him. He's doing what he can with whatever power and whatever options, whatever leverage he has. And clearly, when you're dealing with what my parents would say are, una gente sin vergüenza, people with no shame in their face, it's hard to shame them into doing the right thing because they have no shame. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. Rich Valdez. And I don't even know what I want to do. It's Thursday, but I got a case of the Fridays, if I'm being honest. I want to, I want to explore this topic with Jasmine Crockett. I would like to invite Congresswoman Crockett on the program. I would love to have a conversation with her. I'd also love to have a sit down with Mr. Mamdani and really get in his head a little bit, and respectfully. Right, something I learned, believe it or not, from the great one. You can't be so tough, and from Donald Trump, right? He told me once. He said you can't be. He said it's a tough job you've got. It's a tough job you've got because if you're too tough, your guest won't come back, and if you're too easy, your audience won't respect you. And it was a brilliant point that I thought he made. And Mark said, look, you beat them up too much, they're going to hang up. And that's true. So, I would love to have a conversation with AOC, with Zoran Mamdani. I'd love to have that type of forum here where we can really speak with people. I wish they would come on. I think I'm pretty respectful. Anyway, amigos, we are going to continue our conversation. Depending on what part of the country you might be hearing more of me after this. Depending on where you are, you may not. But either way, take care, good night, and God bless you, America. I'm Rich Valdez.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media, your liberty-loving Latino amigo. Happy to be with you this Thursday night. We're live, we're national. Here's the phone number if you want to join us, 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. And I absolutely love that part of the show where you guys get to call in. Open Phone America. Matter of fact, I think we're going to spend a whole hour doing that in a little bit. But right now, I want to get into, what we do here. We talk about what's going on in America, and we do it at night. Now, this thing with the FBI, I'm of mixed emotion here, so we're going to bring in one of the pros to help set us straight on that. Maybe I need a little correction here. Or maybe I'm onto something. I don't know. But there's other things that are going on. Cambodia has nominated President Trump for a Nobel Prize. That is great. I hope that it sticks. I hope it's more than a nomination. I hope that these bozos, and I say that respectfully, with the committee that decide who gets these awards, I hope they take a moment to be honest and do the right thing. Let me see here. That's a silly story. Oh, Jussie Smollett is returning to TV. And this is going to be interesting. The show is called Special Forces, the world's toughest test. We'll talk about that a little bit more later. And I want to posit an idea to you, and maybe we'll talk about it in a subsequent hour, right? Maybe the next hour. But I want to talk about something we've talked about in the past, but I want to talk about it again, different angle, and that's fixing your car, right? Doesn't matter what kind of car you have, unless you're leasing a brand new car. But if you've had a car that's more than like 3 years old, and even some new cars, they require maintenance, and I find that it's really expensive, and it's getting more expensive to do it. And not only that, but so many people are like opting to fix their car and invest a little in their car because it's cheaper to fix your car than to buy a new one in many cases. So mechanics, the local guy, Pep Boys, all the big retailers, they're all super busy. All right, I remember going to Pep Boys, and this is not a paid endorsement, but I would walk in and I would say, hey, can you guys give me an oil change? And they'd say, hang on. Yeah, it's going to be about 20 minutes. And I'd go into a little thing, and you get like a free cup of watered-down coffee, and you wait, you watch, Dr. Phil on TV, and voila. You're good. And then they come back and they tell you, all right, yeah, it's going to be whatever, $64.90. And, oh, by the way, you need tires. Those are another $1,600. But guess what? If you buy them today, we'll give them to you for $1,400, and you could apply for the Pep Boys credit card that'll cover your tires and this, and this. I found all these things wrong with your car, right? And that's what they do. But now, I went there to fix something on my daughter's car, and they said, oh, you're going to have to make an appointment for another day. And I said, well, like tomorrow? And they were like, oh, no, it was not tomorrow. That's how busy they were. So I went to the local mom and pop shop by me, and this is a guy I've dealt with a lot. And he tells me, in a very stressed out answer, no, I can't do it right now. You could leave it here. I could look at it tomorrow, and I'm talking about just looking at it tomorrow. If I'm going to fix it, it's got to be on the third day, 2 days from now. And I was like, all right, take it easy. Because he was used to getting battered and, the barrage of questions from customers. So I take it to a third local mechanic who I was actually just at earlier this week doing my brakes. And he tells me, listen, brother, I can't. I'm jammed up. Bring it on Thursday. And this was on Tuesday. And so I went again with my daughter's car today. And it made me think, what is going on here? Do we have a lack of auto mechanics? And when people say, what's the future? And AI, there is no AI that is going to do any of this stuff, right? No AI is going to do your brakes. I don't care about robotics, any of that stuff. You need somebody with experience, and these are simple repairs. What about when they're challenging repairs? Yeah, no AI. So I got to tell you, these guys are at a point where they can name their price. They are turning down work left and right, and guess what? There is no option. Yeah, YouTube, go buy your own tools, go to AutoZone. You could do all that stuff, right? Or one of the other big auto parts stores. But the reality is, somebody's got to do this work. And I see a big market for that, a very big market. Now, perhaps maybe the tariffs will bring more auto manufacturing to the United States, which I think they will, and maybe that will change the market. But I don't see how it would, only because I don't think it's going to be cheaper to make cars in the U.S., but for making them in the U.S. is cheaper than paying a tariff. But that doesn't mean that it previously wasn't cheaper, right? So it's not going to make it cheaper is my point. Hope I made that clear. And I just, I don't know, I'm thinking of becoming a mechanic by day, radio host by night, because it seems like there's a tremendous opportunity there. So I don't know, maybe I'm onto something, maybe I'm not. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. Wasn't planning on talking about that now, but it's definitely weighing my mind, how people are handling all their auto maintenance. Or is this something unique to me in North Jersey and the New York metro area? I don't know. But the FBI, Jasmine Crockett, this is where I want to kind of go with this, because I feel, and again, not Jasmine Crockett specifically. Moreover, there's a census coming. There's a redistricting going on. Texas wants 5 new districts. They're going to go to redraw the map, and it's going to be 5 districts that are in areas popular with Republicans. So likely Republicans will win those seats, and that's super for Republicans and maintaining a majority. And like we talked about with the great one, Mark Levin, power, right? Maintaining power to keep doing what we do. But the issue becomes, can we and will we if people don't show up to vote? So Governor Abbott's out there issuing or signing arrest warrants that were issued by the Speaker of the House in Texas, and still nothing. So now people are saying we need the FBI involved. And this is where it's a real position of ignorance for me, but it doesn't seem like it's a helpful strategy. And maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm right, I don't know. But we're going to talk with the former chairman of the Federal Election Commission, Hans Von Spakovsky, is going to join us. He's over at Heritage, and I'm pretty sure he's going to have the right angle on this. So keep it locked right here, folks. We're going to come right back, have that discussion, plus your calls and more coming up. Open Phone America. You guys are going to get to call in and talk about my mechanic issues and everything else you want to talk about. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
By the way, your ratings are up. Congratulations. I had somebody. It's always nice to check. I like to see, even if they're friends, I like to see how are they doing. Are people listening, right?
That's
but
right.
You're doing great.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
The FBI is now getting involved in the case of those Texas Democrats who left the state Sunday. They left to prevent a vote on a new congressional map that favors Republicans in the 2026 midterm election.
Now, on Tuesday, Texas Governor Greg Abbott ordered state troopers to arrest the missing Democrats, but those warrants only work within state lines. Fox's Asher Red live in Austin tonight. And Asher, Republicans are asking the feds to get involved.
Well, Caroline and Rashi, 57 Democrats left the state of Texas Sunday afternoon, and they're camping out in places like Illinois, New York, and Massachusetts, which means Texas state troopers can't arrest them. So this morning, FBI Director Kash Patel granted Texas Senator John Cornyn's request for federal help in finding those AWOL Democrats. Cornyn is asking Patel to investigate bribery allegations because he claims the missing Dems may be illegally accepting funds to pay a $500 fine for each day they're gone. But the Democrats say their goal is to hold out until Texas's special legislative session ends on August the 19th.
So that's the latest on that. And I want to get to the bottom of this because, again, I don't know if I'm a fan of Cornyn's or not. I don't know if this is going to play into... The Democrats say Donald Trump is a dictator. They say this, they say that. He's going after political enemies. And now they're all they want is video footage of them being arrested and locked up to take back to the people and say, look, we told you he was coming after us. He's coming after you too. Right? This is their game. Do we really need the FBI here? I don't know. I'm hoping that somebody's going to set me straight or agree with me, one or the other. And to do that, we've got our guest coming in. Hans Von Spakovsky, senior legal fellow at the Edwin Meese III Center for Legal and Judicial Studies at the Heritage Foundation. Hans is an experienced lawyer, and he's been with us in the past. Hans, welcome back, sir.
Well, thanks for having me back, Rich.
Yes, sir. Now, what do you think here? Am I off my rocker? Am I, carrying water for Democrats when I say I don't think it's a great idea to get the FBI involved, or is it the best thing we can do and the only way forward?
I know that people think this is somehow unusual, but keep in mind two things. One, Texas law makes it illegal for legislators to do this, to leave the state. That was put in place back in 2021, the last time Democrats leave the state. So the governor is within his authority to order their arrest. Now, anytime, forget for a second we're doing redistricting and we're trying to get the legislators back. Look, anytime someone violates the law in a state and they flee the state and arrest warrants are issued for that person within the state, the FBI routinely helps states find individuals who have fled after violating state law. That happens all the time. In fact, FBI even has a national database that lists warrants in all the different states. So if somebody is found in a different state, the home state can be notified. So the idea that something is somehow unusual, it's not. By the way, you mentioned that some of these legislators had fled to Massachusetts. Well, that's particularly ironic given the claims they're making about how terrible this gerrymandering is. You know, Massachusetts is where the word gerrymander came from, because the governor of the state in 1812, in fact, approved the first gerrymandering of districts to favor his political party. And today, about 35% of the statewide vote in Massachusetts is Republican, yet out of 9 congressional seats, there's not a single Republican one. Why? Because the Democrats who control the state legislature there have completely gerrymandered the state. So, I mean, talk about hypocrisy.
Yeah, well, listen, I'm never at a loss for words when it comes to hypocrisy and Democrats. But I get what you're saying, that it may not be unusual or out of the norm. I get that, too. I just think politically it may not be a very sound idea because it just, I think, plays into a lot of what they're saying. But we're not going to, not do what we have to do, for the sake of politics. I just think it may bode well for them, for lack of a better word. But let's talk about the, the legal implications, right? Because this is a statewide matter, and they've made that illegal. How much teeth do you think these warrants from the Speaker of the House have?
Well, these are from the Speaker of the House, but there is something else that could happen, and that is that the governor has said that he and the Attorney General, Ken Paxton, are going to look at possibly charging these legislators under the Texas Penal Code, which has a section on bribery. If you look at that statute, it's very, very broad. It would seem to cover what's happening here. Apparently, outside groups are raising money and providing room and board and money to pay any fines imposed to these legislators for what? In exchange for their refusal to appear at the special session and to vote.
The plot thickens.
Yes, that fits right within the statute, which says that if you accept or agree to accept as a legislator from another any benefit as consideration for your decision, opinion, recommendation, or vote.
Or lack thereof, I would suppose.
Yeah, you have violated the law. So if these folks are getting outside monies from liberal organizations and others, they are potentially violating the federal bribery statute. And if they are charged and indicted, then they can potentially be extradited to Texas.
Huh. Well, now that's different, right? Because framing the situation as we've got some rogue AWOL politicians is very different than we have a bunch of politicians that are suspected and potentially being charged with bribery, and that makes sense.
Right.
Hey, I'm going to pay you to go to Chicago and to run away from your job. Is different than running away from your job as a matter of protest. Folks, we're on with Hans Von Spakovsky, and I told you if anybody was going to set me straight, it would be him. He's a legal scholar at the Heritage Foundation. He's served in various capacities in our nation's government, and he's with us now. Hans, do you think that it's going to get to that? Do you think that we're actually going to see Texas state representatives being hauled into Texas because they've refused to do their job?
Well, the potential is there, but the other thing that I think is more likely to happen is this. The governor has also cited a state statute that has to deal with the abandonment of their offices by state officials, including legislators. And Ken Paxton has warned that any legislator who is not back in the legislature by Friday, August 8th, that he's going to initiate actions. Under that particular statute, what has to happen is either the Attorney General or a local DA has to file an action in court against that legislator claiming that they have abandoned their seat. It's then up to a judge to decide whether or not that is correct. But if the judge decides that the Democratic legislator has abandoned his or her seat by their actions, the seat becomes empty, and the governor, can fill it, and then they hold a special election. So if these guys stay away for a long period of time,
that's a great strategy.
Yeah.
Hans, that's an interesting take, and I think that would probably be more effective than any of these things that we're talking about. You tell a politician they're not going to be a politician anymore, I think they're going to show up real quick. That's very, very interesting. Well, I want to continue this conversation straight ahead. I also want to get your take on a couple of other things that are going on in the news because, of course, this redistricting, it doesn't just end there. There's all this talk from the other side saying, this is the future of democracy and how we're usurping said democracy. So Hans Von Spakovsky, stick with us. We're coming right back to discuss this and a couple more things. Amigos, of course, we're going to continue our discussion with Hans, and your calls are coming up right after that. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. Don't go anywhere.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. We continue our conversation with Hans Von Spakovsky. And Hans, the famous late night show, not this one, the one by Stephen Colbert, the one that's recently been canceled, had J.B. Pritzker on the show last night. And he says that the Texas Republicans and the governor there are taking away black and brown people's voting rights. What do you make of that?
Well, that's a lie. In fact, the reason that Texas is actually acting, and Pritzker doesn't want to mention this, is that Texas actually got a warning letter from the U.S. Department of Justice. And what was it about? Well, in 2021, when they did their redistricting after the census, They created 4 congressional districts in which they created what are called coalition districts. These are districts in which there aren't enough black voters to be a majority in one district. There aren't enough Hispanic voters, minority voters in one district to be a majority. So what they do is they combine 2 different racial groups that will be over 50%. That's called a coalition district. At the insistence of Democrats, Republicans created 4 of them. Well, the problem is that last year, the Fifth Circuit U.S. Court of Appeals, that's the Court of Appeals that covers Texas, also Louisiana, Mississippi, said those kind of districts, they are not protected under the Voting Rights Act. And in fact, if you're using race in that manner as your primary factor in drawing the boundary lines of a political district, you're violating the Constitution. You're violating the 14th Amendment, the one person, one vote standard, because the Supreme Court has said you cannot use race as the primary factor in drawing political boundary lines. If you do that, like I said, you're violating equal protection. Texas thought they had to do that. But the Fifth Circuit said, nope, you can't do that. That's not protected. And so DOJ said to Texas, you need to fix those districts. And that's exactly what they have done. Now, they've come up with a new plan. It's got 5 new districts. Yeah, they tend to favor Republicans, but political gerrymandering is perfectly legal. Democrats have been doing it for decades.
Unbelievable. And, it's so interesting the way that they portray this. But again, that's J.B. Pritzker, this big millionaire guy from Chicago who comes out, says whatever he wants, and almost matter-of-factly that whatever the Republicans are doing is just naturally bad. There's no option but for it to be bad. And this is, I think, the ongoing theme. But interesting to see how they really, a lot of bark and very little bite. So I think if I had to guess here, I would suspect, based on the last part of our conversation, that they can be charged with abandonment. How long is the criteria for that? How long do they have to hang out in Chicago to be considered abandoning their office?
Well, see, that's a problem with filing those kind of lawsuits. The law on this is very hazy, and it really is up to the local judge, based on the facts of a case, to determine whether or not that judge thinks that the legislator has abandoned his or her office. So I can't predict. I don't know how local judges in Texas are going to rule on that. I suspect that, a lot of the state court judges there, I think a lot of them, may be politically biased in particular ways, and that may influence how they rule in those cases.
All right. Well, here's another one. I want to ask you again. I want to get your legal opinion on this one. The Trump administration Department of Justice announcing a $50 million reward for the capture of Venezuelan dictator Nicolás Maduro, and maybe this is a bounty, maybe this is a reward for information. I'm not sure exactly how they're phrasing it, but what do you know about it, and what are your thoughts on it?
Well, I don't know a lot about it, except I will point out that when the president went after that Venezuelan gang and used the Alien Enemies Act, they described in that executive order that there's all this evidence that Venezuela has basically become a narco-terrorist state, allied with criminal cartels and gangs in South America. And so that's the kind of thing that would lead to this. Remember, we've done this before. Remember Noriega, the head of Panama, was captured by Americans and charged in American courts because of his criminal wrongdoing, and I think this is a lot of the same thing.
Well, it's going to be interesting for me to see if we lock up a dictator by just putting a little bounty on his head. I'm curious to see how that plays out. Hans Von Spakovsky, I want you to let everybody know what the latest project you guys are working on at the Ed Meese Center, and and where people can find out more about it.
Well, they can go to heritage.org, and the biggest thing we're going to do next month is we're going to launch the 3rd edition of the Heritage Guide to the Constitution, which has explanations of and the history of every single section, clause, and part of the U.S. Constitution. It is a terrific guide. I mean, you want to know what any provision of the Constitution means and what the history of how it's been interpreted. The Heritage Guide to the Constitution is the place to go. It's online. I mean, we're gonna be putting out hardback versions of it, but right now the 2nd edition of it is online, and folks, I recommend they use it.
Outstanding. Again, heritage.org is the website for that. And Hans, let everybody know how they can follow you on social media and everywhere else that you are sharing your work.
Right. Well, I'm at H. Von Spakovsky, but the other big thing that I do now is I host a weekly legal podcast called Case in Point, and it's very different from other legal podcasts, and I hope folks will tune in and give a listen.
Well, you know what? We have a pretty good audience here. Let's tell them a little bit about what's going on in Case in Point. What's the format like, and what are you talking about?
We always have a guest on. So I've had folks on, like, it started off with Newt Gingrich, talking about what was going on in Washington. I recently had the attorney generals on of 2 different states talking about some of the litigation they've been involved in, like Nebraska suing the state of California over its requirement that all trucks have to become electric trucks, by a certain year, which would ruin the trucking industry. And I always end it, Rich, with a classic movie review of a movie that's kind of related to whatever legal topic we have been talking about.
Well, give us a little bit of a spoiler. What movie would you pick, either for what we're talking about or what you were talking about in your last podcast?
I just released the last podcast. It was all about the cutoff of funding to NPR and PBS and what effect that might have, and the movie, because we were talking about biased reporters and corrupt Justice Department officials as sources. So the movie review was of the 1981 movie called Absence of Malice. I don't know if you remember that. It was Paul Newman and Sally Field, and Paul Newman is savaged by a defamatory newspaper story that was started by a corrupt DOJ lawyer faking a false story in order to try to get Paul Newman.
I love it. I can't wait to tune in. I had no idea about this, so I'm glad that you brought it up. Folks, check out the podcast Case in Point with Hans Von Spakovsky. Hans, where do they get it? Is that on all the platforms, or are you signed exclusively?
Yeah, they can get it. They can get it at heritage.org, but it's also on Spotify and Apple. It's basically everywhere.
Outstanding. Well, good luck with that. It sounds like a really a fun conversation, and I love the movie angle at the end. You got to have a little levity there. Hans, I appreciate your time and the conversation, sir.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
You bet. And amigos, we continue with your thoughts, your calls, your reactions to everything that's going on. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, amigos, welcome back. I want to get to some of your calls. Let us go to St. Cloud, Minnesota. KNSI. Jake, go for it.
Hey, Rich. After listening to your last caller, I just had to add one thing. There's got to be, your last guest. There's got to be something to do with conspiracy to subvert the legislative process in there. but I'm not a lawyer, so I would let him try to figure that one out. But it sounds like there's definitely something they can do.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, but I look at I always try to put it and say, if I were a Republican and I was like, you know what, I'm going to go to New York while you guys try to pass this crazy commie Marxist bill, take care, brush your hair, I'll see you later. And they turned to me and said, you're committing conspiracy to subvert the legislative process, then I'd be in big trouble. So I think that's the reason we don't have rules like that. I think you can compel people to go to work, at least they did in Texas. And that's the part I think I don't know if you can compel them to vote. I don't know if you can compel them to do anything else. But I think you can compel them if they're elected people based on the law that they passed in 2021 to show up to work. So we'll see how it goes. Again, this is, for me, it's uncharted territory. And I hate, a lot of government intervention, personally.
That's their job, and they're trying to get away from it. Like they're also working as a group to try to mess with the legislative process. I'm sure there's something there.
Yeah. Well, again, I'm just thinking when it's Democrats with a bad idea, I'm hoping that the Republicans are going to work as a group and try and thwart their legislative agenda. So I think that's kind of the essence of politics, and that's why we can't criminalize it. But we'll see. We'll see. I think the biggest one they've got going for them is the idea that they would be abandoning their office if they don't show up after X amount of time. I don't know what that X is, but I think you'll get any politician to show up after they work hard to get elected. They're going to try and stay elected. Thanks, Jake. I appreciate it. And good points. Something to think about. A shout out to you guys in Minnesota. Let me see. Where do I go from here? We're going to go to our buddy Paul. Paul's calling us from Idaho, streaming the show, richvaldez.com. By the way, on richvaldez.com at the end of the program, after our 3-hour show, Mr. Good, who's in our control room, he will be putting the podcast together and uploading it so that anybody who's missed the Mark Levin interview or the interview with Hans or any of the rest of the show, you'll be able to listen to the entirety of the show, probably I'd say by 1 a.m. Eastern time, New York time, because Mr. Good is on the East Coast. You will be able to listen to that podcast. I know there's people already asking for it on social media, so don't worry about my friend. You're going to get it. So that's Rich Valdez with an S.com. All right, let's go to Paul. Paul's in Boise, streaming the show from that very website. Go right ahead, sir.
Good evening. Thanks for taking my call.
You sound a little muffled, Paul. Fix the mouthpiece on the phone.
Okay, I'll unplug it. That'll make a difference. Okay, is that better?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, Jake Sullivan, he popped in my head, and then, of course, Anthony Blinken.
Yeah.
And, of course, Joseph Biden, the dynamic trio that they were, and the National Security Advisor Sullivan. I don't think I've ever seen a worse crew than that, to the best of my recollection.
With you. I agree with you. The foreign policy team from the Biden administration was horrible. Again, not to be sounding like I'm giving kudos to Susan Rice and the national security team from the Biden era. I mean the Obama era. But yeah, I think you're right. I think Secretary Blinken was useless. I think Jake Sullivan, again, not only useless, but really just on the wrong page most times. And it was clear as day that was the case, Paul.
Yeah, and then of course you have to put up Trump's administration compared to that, and it's like apples and oranges, night and day. I mean, it's just you can't put the two up together. It just doesn't work. And the one thing that struck out the most in my mind was the Penn Center. When Biden's attorney found some of those classified and top secret deals in a closet in a box in one of the offices in the Penn Center,
right.
He was able to take them away, and he got them off scot-free by removing those files.
Man, I tell you, a lot of people getting away with a lot of things scot-free. My hope is that this stuff won't continue into the future, and I'm pretty confident that it won't. I think we finally got our arms around this, and I often say daylight is the best disinfectant, and it really is. I think once people know, by and large, wow, this is wrong and it's going on, most people will try their best to make sure that doesn't happen again, at least, not on their watch. And I think we're getting to that point where you have a good amount of people who realize, man, things went really wrong in that last administration, and we don't need another repeat of Joe El Baboso Biden. I think, in fact, we need to make sure what happened there never happens again. Paul, thanks for the call, brother. I'm coming right back with the rest of your calls and, of course, a few thoughts from me. And I want to know what's going on with your auto maintenance. Am I the only one that is having a hard time with all this stuff and getting a mechanic that's willing to see me and take care of everything and not busy? Or is everybody's mechanic just, seeing cars next week? I don't know. You let me know. 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. Rich Valdez keeping you company this evening. 833-482-5337 is the phone number. And again, it seems like there is a bounty that has been put, not just information, but an actual bounty being put on Nicolas Maduro for being the facilitator of the gangs and the henchmen that are facilitating a lot of the cartel's work to bring fentanyl and other drugs and criminal elements into the United States. Pam Bondi putting out a message today that was reminiscent of, I don't know, like America's Most Wanted. I'll play it for you in the next hour, but really just fascinating to me. Fascinating what's going on here. So we're going to see how that plays out. I'm wondering, is this more attention-grabbing August headlines, or is this a real move to take out the sitting president of Venezuela, which, I may not be opposed to. I don't favor Marxists. I really don't. Call me crazy. But anyway, I want to get to some of your calls. Eric is in Schenectady, New York, WGDJ. Eric, go right ahead, sir.
Hi, sir. How you doing? I'm not calling in to be political by any means. I will say that I have formed my opinion over the Epstein situation with our current president. I feel as though that he is very much involved in it, and I do feel that I'm being lied to from him. I can look at various pieces of evidence. One is very strong when you can look at audio and visual of them palling around for probably 10 or 12 years before Epstein even gets in trouble. And right. Then you have...
I don't know that that's compelling evidence that they hung out with somebody and now all of a sudden I'm raping children on a private island that there's no evidence he's even been to. But moreover, I think if there was really evidence, it wouldn't be Trump hiding it. It would be the Democrats putting it out there. I'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to another hour of the program, 7 minutes past the top of the hour, Thursday night, live national. Here's the phone number, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. And we've been talking about a number of things this evening. I want to talk about a number of other topics. Really, whatever you guys want. It's all good to me. I always enjoy hearing from the people. I enjoy seeing your feedback, even if it's negative, right? I look at some of the comments on Twitter and I go, oh, I guess they don't like me. But, I do take a look. And sometimes they do like me, right? You got Johnny Jacob Jingleheimer Schmidt. He tweeted about my Biden impression. Thank you, brother. I appreciate it. I appreciate your comments on the show. And you're right. It is important that liberty and morality must stay intertwined for our survival. You highlight Jefferson. I was highlighting Madison, who said similar. And these are the fundamental capstones of our very, very system, our very, very society, our constitutional order. This is it, and we're missing the mark. So the great one, Mark Levin, always talks about this being a post-constitutional society, and he's right. We really have gone so far away from it, but it doesn't mean that we can never get back to it. And I think that's the key. It's kind of like when you have a city overrun with crime, you bring a new sheriff in town, you get things back. It doesn't change the norm that you shouldn't be a criminal, right? That you have to bring in the law enforcement and clean things up. And I think that's the process that we're in America. I feel like we're in the middle of an American revival. And all I could say is, look, what do you want to see? Do you want to see, let's see, when is the oath of office? January 20th of 2029, right? So that'll be after whomever wins in 2028. And what do you want to see? Do you want to see some leftist? Do you want to see, I don't know, who just imagine, President all-out crazy AOC Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Vice President Jasmine Crockett taking the oath of office on the steps of Capitol Hill there, surrounded by their family and their fellow Americans, and radical squad member progressive leftists as far as the eye can see. The likes that would make Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren all warm and fuzzy on the inside. Stalin and Mao and Maduro and the rest of them, the rest of the Marx himself, they would all be so proud of what's happening, of their brethren, of their comrades. Is that the America that you want? Or is it an America where we go back to the basics? You look out for your fellow man. We care about our country. We do the right thing. We make sure that we stay prominent and dominant, right? It's not always about minding your business. It's about being number one. That's the country we're in. That's the business we're in. And in a country like that, that's what President Trump is doing. He's making sure that he can cut deals. He's making sure that we can win. That's how you win when you're number one. When people want to do business. The only reason this tariff strategy works is because people want to do business here. This is the reason people were up in arms saying, oh, it'll never work. It's going to cost too much. There is a cost associated. I'm not negating that. But what I'm saying is those that want to pay for imports, let them pay for the imports. If you want to buy a product that's not made in the United States, then you deserve to pay a little more for it. I got that. And in some cases, we can't get around it, right? I have an American car. It's one of the GM brands, and I needed to put struts in. And these weren't just simple struts. Leave it to me to get the one that needs electromagnetic gliding struts. Okay, super. So where do they make them? Well, it's an American part, but they make them, I don't know where. They're not always made in America. So, you're paying an import. There was no made in America option for me for my American car. Right? The packaging literally had Sanskrit on it, and it said GM. I had never seen something like that. Maybe I'll tweet a picture of it later. And if I'm mistaken, then I'll stand corrected. But that's just how things are right now. you need these parts. You know, I wanted to use the original part so that it felt the same. And if I went with the other one, it was probably coming from China. So my point is, if you have to, you have to. But for some, you'll have the option of buying a part that's American made, and you won't have to pay the import tax on the tariff. Okay, super. But the reason the strategy works overall, the reason the Treasury is getting all the money from the people who are paying the overage, right, when it is passed on to the consumer, or to the companies that are eating the cost and paying it so that they can have said consumer, it's because people want to do business with you and with me. They want to do business with us in America. So President Trump figured this out, and he realized it. He said, you know what? I will either play nice and give you access to this market, or I won't. And I'll cut off access to this market. You be the judge. You decide. What do you want to do? You want to start selling some American cars and stop tariffing our stuff at 4,000%, like the dairy that Canadians were doing? And I think it was a brilliant move. But it's because he understood what was going on. He understood that people want to do business here. And that's a big plus. It's a huge plus. So it's understanding that I think really allows us to flourish. And if anybody gets it, Trump does. Now, I want to switch gears a little bit here. And I want to go to this topic of the Department of Justice issuing this bounty, if you will, this reward for the capture or information leading to the capture of Nicolas Maduro. It was already a $25 million bounty or reward. Now they've doubled it. Attorney General Pam Bondi making that announcement today. And I think we have a copy of that clip. Mr. Good, is that available? Let her rip.
Today, the Department of Justice and State Department are announcing a historic $50 million reward for information leading to the arrest of Nicolas Maduro. Maduro uses foreign terrorist organizations like TDA, Sinaloa, and Cartel of the Suns to bring deadly drugs and violence into our country. To date, the DEA has seized 30 tons of cocaine linked to Maduro and his associates, with nearly 7 tons linked to Maduro himself, which represents a primary source of income for the deadly cartels based in Venezuela and Mexico. Cocaine is often laced with fentanyl, resulting in the loss and destruction of countless American lives. The DOJ has seized over $700 million of Maduro-linked assets, including 2 private jets, 9 vehicles, and more. Yet Maduro's reign of terror continues. He is one of the largest narco-traffickers in the world and a threat to our national security.
Well, I hear Venezuela's beautiful this time of year. That's a Jersey Shore reference. Shout out to Paulie D. And I can tell you this, that type of tough talk only sounds like we're about to, the way they were saying that President Trump was going to go and build Trump Gaza, right? What was it? Gaza Lago or whatever they were calling it. Sounds like we might be doing that in Venezuela. Now, I'll tell you this, I've never been to Venezuela, but the women are absolutely gorgeous there. And it does border Colombia, and I've been to Colombia, and that's a beautiful place as well. I mean, you got mountain side, you've got the city and the mountains meeting in the same place. Wild, phenomenal views, and amazing weather. You can have a 60 some odd degree night and a 85 or 90 plus degree daytime, and just great weather, great vibe, great food. So I don't know. Let's see what happens. What direction are we going in here? And who would be the ideal person to turn in Maduro? Well, obviously his people, right? Somebody who's eager amongst his own crew to be a Judas, to say, hey, look, for 30 pieces of silver, I'll sell you out, and then hopefully do a better job than he did, right? Or face the same. So I don't know. I don't know the outcome of this, but I guess in many ways it's good that there's a push to stem the tide of fentanyl coming into the country. It's going to cause alarm and concern for those that are isolationists that do not want the United States involved in anything that is outside of the United States. And I get that. I don't necessarily agree. I don't think you can be number one if you do the I'm just minding my business thing. It's just not going to work. And I am of the mindset that the United States has to be number one and stay number one. And when we're not, we have to get back into that number one spot. Because if we're not, what's the old saying? If you're not number one, you're number two. And nobody wants to be number two. So that's my thought on that. Anyway, I'm going to take a pause right here. We're going to come back to your calls. 833, what's the phone number? 482-5337, 833-4-Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
I want to listen to you, Rich, all the time.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. We continue our conversation. And so we're talking about Maduro. We're talking about a few things. Now, Judge Jeanine Pirro, she's weighing in on President Trump talking about the latest, right? Will he be taking over the District of Columbia because of the crime problem? This is interesting. Trump was in the Oval Office yesterday. He made these comments. Let me play them for you. Listen to this.
President Trump, on federalizing D.C., are you considering taking over the D.C. police? Is that an option on the table?
We're considering it, yeah, because the crime is ridiculous. I could show you a chart comparing D.C. to other locations, and you're not going to want to see what it looks like. It was just up on television, actually. They were showing it. Now, we want to have a great, safe capital, and we're going to have it. And that includes cleanliness, and it includes other things. We have a capital that's very unsafe. We just almost lost a young man, beautiful, handsome guy that got the hell knocked out of him the night before last. And I'm going to call him now. We wanted to give him a little recovery time. We just put a call into him. They're calling back in a little while. But he went through a bad situation, to put it mildly, and there's too much of it. We're going to do something about it. So whether you call it federalized or what, and that also includes the graffiti that you see, the papers all over the place, the roads that are in bad shape, the medians that are falling down, the median in between roads that's falling down. We're going to beautify the city. We're going to make it beautiful. And what a shame. The rate of crime, the rate of muggings, killings, and everything else, we're not going to let it. And that includes bringing in the National Guard, maybe very quickly, too.
Bringing in the National Guard. And listen, I'm curious to see what happens. I am a big supporter of doing what you got to do to keep people safe. The last thing in the world anybody needs is to live in a place where you're afraid that someone's going to carjack you. And that's what, if you're in D.C., that's what they do all day, every day. They carjacked the FBI a couple of months back. It's bad. And yeah, I'm glad they're doing something. This is the type of thing you need to do. I mean, who remembers, raise your hand, when they were selling crack and arresting people right across the street from the White House, right? I mean, it was wild. This is how bad the area was. It's not what you need outside the nation's capital. You shouldn't have it anywhere, but let alone in Lafayette Park. So kudos to President Trump. Now, it sucks that you have to have a president, one more thing on his plate, right? So we're taking over Greenland. We're taking over Gaza. We're taking over D.C. I mean, it's too much management work here. We need to encourage them and empower them to make sure they do their own job. But sometimes you got to show people how to do the job and apply this type of pressure to get it done. So I'm hopeful that it's going to be a positive outcome. And, you look at some of the things that Trump has done. And if you've ever been to the Waldorf in D.C., which was once called Trump International Hotel, which was once a landmark post office, and it's a gorgeous place, absolutely, and a nice restaurant there too. And it's a work of art, and it's a nice place to be, a nice place to stay. So I feel like if you've seen the types of transformations that Trump has put together, you should be encouraged by this. Just imagine what D.C. is going to look like when he uses the power that he has to make it better and safer for people. I think that's fantastic. So we'll see how that goes. Now, Judge Jeanine Pirro, she weighed in on this as well, saying, look, we got to hold people accountable. Listen to this, number 2.
Do you support a federal takeover of Washington, D.C., as the president has suggested?
Yeah, that is a decision for the president. And I think that what the president was saying is that we're seeing far too much crime being committed by young people, 14, 15, 16, 17 years old, that I can't get my hands on. I mean, I don't know if you've seen some of the pictures, but, you know, young people are coddled. And they don't need to be coddled anymore. They need to be held accountable. They shouldn't be going to arts and crafts in family court. They need to understand that enough is enough and that the D.C. Council has to repeal some of these absurd ordinances and laws that they've had passed that do nothing to protect the people of this city and of this district.
You know, what Judge, and again, she was a judge in New York. She is the United States Attorney for the District of Washington, D.C., in her acting capacity now. And as U.S. Attorney, she's the chief federal law enforcer there, so which is why they're asking her about this. And she's 100% right. You can't expect to rise to the level of excellence if you don't have a high bar. And in this case, the bar is don't do crime. I think that's a good one, right? Stop killing people. That's also a good one. So I'm hopeful, very, very hopeful, that we're going to see some really positive results coming out of D.C. But this is what you need. You need leaders that are going to actually talk the talk, walk the walk, and have the ingenuity to get around a lot of the red tape. Because when you have pro-crime, progressive prosecutors at the local level that are defending, coddling the criminals, where does that leave you? It leaves you in this situation where you have a city that's been led astray, where virtue's fallen by the wayside and criminality is running amok. And nobody needs that. So I got more on that. I've got more, of course. I'm going to get to your calls. Thanks for your patience. I appreciate it. It's just a few things I want to get to because, it's Thursday, and then tomorrow will be Friday, and I'll be talking about a lot of silly things. And then, we're off for the weekend. So bear with me. Got a few more I got to run through with you. And some really good audio out here today. And we're coming right back. And your calls, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
After the guest leaves every night and we're doing open phones, kind of at the heartbeat of America. And you sit there in this radio studio and suddenly you hear voices. Mobile, Dallas, New York, Miami. And there's kind of a conglomeration of America all in one room.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
The Massachusetts GOP is criticizing Governor Maura Healey over a new report that shows shifting shelter costs to the state's home-based program. The program provides rental assistance to migrant families. According to the report, Massachusetts is on pace to spend $97 million on the home-based program in the current fiscal year. The state spent approximately $9.5 million on housing at-risk families. Massachusetts Republican Party Chair Amy Carnevale released a statement following the release of the report, saying in part, quote, "As much as Maura Healey would like the public to think that she's improving the system, the data tells a different story."
So that is the, again, the data. The program is supposed to be for legal residents of Massachusetts, not people who are not legally in the United States. However, the data is proving otherwise. And I think this is a very, very crazy thing that's going on, right? I mean, again, let's pay close attention to this. You've got $30,000 in housing aid. This is not $30,000 total. This is $30,000 per applicant, right? So you're an illegal alien in this country, and you're like, hey, I need help, and you get $30K. I know Americans that want to buy homes that could love a $30,000 handout from the government. And this is ideally, what they do with this home-based program, right? They help their residents. Instead here, they're helping those that are new to the country. Why? Because they want to fly in the face of right and correct and good. Anyway, this is Massachusetts, whatever her name is, Governor Maura Healey. And she's all for it. She's all for the sanctuary state. So the Boston Herald reported, and this was, again, a month and a half ago, that her administration increased spending in Massachusetts for what they call home base. That's the program they have, up to $97 million. And this is what their plan is. Again, according to the Boston Herald, the eligible families in Massachusetts were being provided with $30,000 in rental assistance over 2 years. And according to the Herald, the total caseload for the home base program increased. So not doing much to tighten things up in the budget, instead spending more money. Just what Massachusetts, or really just what anybody else needs, right? Nobody needs that. So I want to know your thoughts on this. Should we be doing that? Obviously, as taxpayers, I'm not a taxpayer in Massachusetts, but I'm a taxpayer here. Imagine if these were federal funds, I'd be losing my mind. Thankfully, they're not. But should we be doing this type of stuff, right? I don't know. I don't know the answer. I know that the Republican chair there that they just mentioned in the report you heard, Amy Carnevale, she says taxpayers are giving migrant families nearly limitless free rent or rental assistance. Meanwhile, federal action means that these illegal aliens won't be receiving work permits anytime soon. The migrant shelter crisis isn't over, and cost shifting is not leadership. Yeah, I think that's probably right. Right? You want to save money, not spend more of it. So anyway, I want to know, what do you guys think about this? Give me a call, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. I want to go to Florida. Let's go to Daytona Beach, Florida, WTTB. Check in with our buddy Les. Go right ahead, sir.
Thank you, Rich. This concerns your earlier talk tonight about power. And I just wanted to say that might makes right, and the chain of command makes might.
Yeah, it's a valid point. And I think it comes down to, what do we do with this might, right? What do we do with this might? Do we make right with it? While you can make right with might, do people always opt that way? And I think that's the grand problem that we're facing, is that we've got people that are usurping authority and power given to them by the people as if it was something that was theirs to do as they please. And I think that's a big mistake. Lester.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, good point. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. Shout out to everybody in Florida, and, of course, everybody listening on WTTB. I want to continue. Let's go to Paul. Paul's in Zanesville, Ohio, on WHIZ. Paul, go right ahead, sir.
Good evening, Rich. Yeah, I'd like to touch on your about mechanics here. Now, Rich, I just took a job about a month and 2 weeks ago, and I won't say the company's name, but it starts with a V. And I took this job because I'm trying to get to my retirement. I've already discussed with you. I've almost got my home paid off, so I'm right there. So, but the thing is, with your displeasure with mechanics and people's displeasure, let me tell you something. That is a hot, dirty job, okay? Yeah. What we do where I work is we change out your oil, of course, and some other things, a lot of things actually. But, the first thing we do is we check your tires. They're 800 degrees. It's hot. You pull up the hood, put your face over a hot engine. I'll tell you what, it's hot when it's 95 degrees out. Yeah. So, people, give a little respect to your mechanic. They're trying hard. And I would like to say one thing about this place. They give free training once you get on. they pay good benefits. They have good benefits, and they train you as you go along. So I'm
That's
happy
cool.
with the company. It's hard work, man. I'll tell you.
Listen,
so I would encourage anybody. Yes,
I have
sir,
no
go ahead.
doubt, Paul. I really do. Because let me tell you, and my displeasure is really with the cost, not with the mechanics per se, because I love my mechanics. I've been the two that I go to. They're both, one guy's a little older, the other guy's very young. He was an assistant to this Cuban immigrant that was the mechanic here in my town for a while, in that particular spot. And one day the guy said, "I don't want to fix any more cars. I'm leaving, and I'm leaving the place." He tells me, "I'm leaving it to this guy. If he wants it, he can have it. If he can figure out how to get the rent paid here in the garage, it's his." And that's what he did. And this kid, at the time, I think he was a teenager. I think he might have been 19, 18 years old. He's 20-something now, and he's been there for several years. And he's doing well. He's got more work than he can handle for sure, and he's got like 4 guys working with him. But the point is, he does a great job. He's a really hard worker. He just, he's only got 2 lifts, maybe 3. And, he gets enough business for at least, 4 bays or four lifts where you could really be, even 5, they get very busy. And my point is they don't always have the right amount of people, right? And you're talking about training. Sometimes they have a guy that will, use the impact gun to take a wheel off. But he doesn't really do the brakes, doesn't know how to do the brakes, doesn't have that level of expertise yet. So there's but so much the helper can do until the mechanic is able to get things done, until he gets to that level, I would suppose. And I'm with you. Tons of money to be made in blue-collar work, in particular auto mechanics. And that was why I wanted to do this. This is one of my, as they say, a point of personal privilege. I wanted to bring it to the American people and say, I think the future is going to revolve around certain tasks like this. You can't AI a plumbing problem, right? I had a screw that, there's a screw that goes from the toilet tank to the bottom part of the toilet if it's a 2-part toilet, and it had become slightly loose and it was causing a leak. It made the screw rusty, and it was like a brown, rusty colored liquid that was coming behind the back of my toilet tank every time. And I was like, what's going on here? And I figured out what it was, and I had to tighten it, and it worked for a while. But just the other day, I saw another drop of orange water. And I said, man, this is what happens when you don't have the expertise and the training and experience to figure out how to tighten that bolt a little better, because it's under the water and whatnot. But my point is, same thing with the cars. I'm not going to watch all the YouTube videos in the world until I get in there and get my hands dirty. I don't have the level of experience that these guys that went to mechanic school and trade school and have been doing it since they're 15, taking cars apart. That's not me. I've been braking cars and driving cars since I was 15, not putting them together. So, Paul, I want to ask you, what is, normally I wouldn't want to get into any names, but I'm just curious to know which company, if you're comfortable saying so, you don't have to, but I'm curious to know who's giving all this training, like hiring people and then training them later.
Well, I'll tell you what. It starts with a V. They've been in business for 150 years. And they do have a race car. Yeah, that's a NASCAR. I forget who it is. Oh, my goodness. Good time to fall on my face. But anyway, yeah, I'll just tell you this. It starts with V and ends with lean. Okay?
Yeah, no, I got
is
it.
That fair enough?
Yeah, it is. And that's great. And I don't think I have any in my area. At least I haven't seen one. But that's great. And I think more of that is coming. I think we're going to see more of these chains of oil change places and, tire care and selling tires and all of that stuff. Another thing I've learned is years ago, you used to buy tires, and you could still get them, but more and more of these places are selling you tires that have a lower life expectancy. Like, the tread will wear out faster because they're only good for, 10,000, 20,000 miles as opposed to the ones that are for, 30, 40,000 miles. And they do that as, all right, you don't want to pay as much? Sure, we'll give you a cheaper tire, but you're going to be here in 2 years instead of in 3 or 4. And I guess it's relative, all right? But it's just interesting to see the evolution of the concept of planned obsolescence, right? I think more and more things, in particular with cars, are designed to just go bad after a while. They use a inferior product than they would have used, let's say, when you and I were younger, where things, lasted longer. I remember looking at really old cars, and these parts, you're looking at cars that are 50 years old, and these parts, a little bit of starter fluid, and a lot of the original parts still work. So that's not the case with a car today. A car today, you get one or two sensors that goes wrong, and voila, you're looking at an expensive repair, and B, probably calling a rideshare service in order to get to where you got to go until you get your car fixed, or using your backup car or whatever. So yeah, very, very good. Congratulations to you, Paul. I appreciate it. And of course, we're going to get to the rest of your calls straight ahead. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
You're educating America, and you are giving us an opportunity to speak freely. That's why I love this station, and I love your show.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
The number of people fixing our cars has dropped.
Wyatt Williams from our Wausau affiliate spoke with one service shop that's trying to get more people into the auto tech workforce.
Well, it means my livelihood.
Whether it's people leaving the industry or others retiring after a long career, the numbers in the auto tech business are down. Industry officials say a big part of the problem is the constant change in vehicles and parts for them. Kent Olson, president of Olson Tire and Auto, started a program to get more staff into shops. He's doing everything he can to get people fired up and interested in the ever-changing auto tech workforce.
We have to have technicians that are here. We need good critical thinkers. It was different, honestly, from when I was a young man and when I was a technician. It was you took things apart with your hands and you were able to build them or rebuild them. Today it's thinking. It's different skill sets, so it's a new kind of technician that we're looking for and trying to develop.
It's not starter fluids and carburetors, it's sensors and codes and plastic clips. But either way, you need a skilled technician. I agree with that. And this sums up what I've been seeing in the world, right? That there are less people out there that can fix my car. So I want to get your thoughts on this and everything else. We've talked about a number of things this evening. All of them are open for discussion. Our phone number is 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. And let's go to San Francisco, California. Let's check in with Lewis on KSFO. Go right ahead.
Oh, yeah. Listen, how you doing? I just wanted because I was starting to write a book, but I'm not a writer. But I just wanted to know because, in those days when this country was founded, the founders, they didn't have sleazy individuals like they had now. Now you got all these people that had no scruples or anything. But I was telling the person that answered the phone that I wanted to know if there's anything in the Constitution that they might have put in that to be able to get after Obama because all the damage he's done to this country, and he's still behind because he's still in Washington. He hasn't left that town, and this guy is. There was a guy named Solinsky that trained him since he was a kid in communism, and
the
these
Rules
people,
for Radicals guy, yeah.
Yes, and the thing is that we're facing dangerous times now because if we just lay back and let these people get away with all the stuff they're doing, you see, because the press is on the side of the Democrats and the liberal side, so all they do is cover for them, and they don't care what happens to the country because they're trying to change this country to make it into like one of those countries that some type of
like one of the communist countries.
Right. Well, where you don't need no more elections.
Right. Like Venezuela.
Right. You get that person in there, and that's it. That's the end. Because I remember when I was in grade school, I used to argue with the teachers back then. I'm from Brooklyn, and
me too. Where from?
Right between Red Hook and Borough Hall, that area there.
Very cool.
How'd
you end up in San Francisco?
Huh?
How did you end up in San Francisco?
Well, my family, they kept insisting. I hate this place. I can't stand it. But
I don't blame you.
I bought a property in Florida. I want to move out of here, but I got so
Me
many
too.
pets.
I want to move to
I got
Florida.
to figure out how to take them with me.
That's funny.
That's why I haven't.
Well, Luis, I would love to stay and talk, but I got to take a commercial break here. But I hope to bump into you in Florida. Godspeed to you. Keep listening on KSFO, great station, and keep the faith, my brother. Let's continue when we come back. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
We continue with our calls across America. This time, Cumberland, Maryland, WCBC. Our buddy Frank, go for it.
Mark Levin is blazing new ground, but there have been many before him who have said essentially the same thing. Ayn Rand, for example, her two novels, The Fountainhead, Atlas Shrugged, the movie that was made with Gary Cooper and Patricia Neal, also Thomas Sowell and Walter Williams, two black writers, and also the last, the Foundation for Economic Education on Irvington-on-Hudson. Published an essay that everyone ought to read. It's called I, Pencil, and it's the epitome of capitalism.
Yes. You are such a good caller, Frank. You really are. You should teach a class in making radio comments. I, Pencil is something that Mark Levin showed to me a long time ago, and you're right. It is one of the best exposés on capitalism, on the free market I've ever seen based on a pencil, because everybody understands it. Your point about Ayn Rand, I think, is right. She argued that the only legitimate power that the government had was the power to protect individual rights and punish those who violate those rights. And she was a big libertarian. I love her. I loved Atlas Shrugged. I love Fountainhead. I saw one of the movies, but not both. But did check out both of the books. Terrific. And you're right. Levin put. I think he's 2.0 on a lot of this stuff. He's looking at existing ideas and really crystallizing and forming them to a point where we're looking at them through today's lens, which I think nobody's had that benefit of doing because we didn't have today before, and today is so crazy. So all very, very good points, and I appreciate it. Thank you very much for your call. Frank in Cumberland, Maryland, WCBC. The music means I got to go. And there was another point he made. I don't have time to address it now. But always a pleasure to speak with the people, we the people. Again, if you missed the conversation with Mark Levin, in some stations you're going to hear that straight ahead. In others, you're going to get other stuff. But either way, I am Rich Valdez. Hasta la próxima. Take care, good night, and God bless you, America.